Welcome to August Dirigo Lab Speaker Series. It's so great getting to see everyone this evening. For those of you who have not attended in the past, Dirigo Lab Speaker Series is a monthly event that features founders and leaders who share insight on how they develop their product, challenge their target market, and provide you with actionable insights on creating your own products and processes. For more information, you can find us on Facebook or online at dirigolabs.org under our Speaker Series tab. This free event is presented by Dirigo Labs and is sponsored by the Harold Alpont Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College, Valley Beverage, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. In addition, this conversation is being recorded and will be provided for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This evening's conversation is presented by Profit Decoder co-founder Jay Friedlander. In this speaker series, Jay will discuss how Profit Decoder's guided experience empowers hundreds of creative entrepreneurs to gain valuable insights into their business and financial health, thereby allowing businesses to enhance profitability while pursuing their dreams. And I'll hand it off to you, Jay.
Thanks so much. Thank you everyone for having me tonight. It's great to be here. I mean, on an August night in Maine, I'm just glad we have people in the room. So that's awesome. And so, you know, I've been on this journey for quite some time. So I'm going to give you some history and talk about the evolution of the company and then dive into Profit Decoder. I would encourage you to stop, ask me questions, interrupt. I am by day a sustainable business professor at College of the Atlantic. And one thing about professors is that they can go on and on and on. And so stop me, interrupt, ask questions. And then I'm assuming we'll have time at the end here and I'll do a demo of Profit Decoder after we've talked about it. But I just wanted to start with a question of how many people in here have started a business? All right, why did you start your business? Why did you start the real estate company?
Because the company I was working for was not doing well, and I could see that they were going to go out of business. So I said,
"All right, you got to eat, and you could like start your own thing." Yeah, for other folks, why did you start your business? Yeah, make money. Make money. All right. Yeah.
Didn't want to work for someone anymore.
All right, I didn't want to work for someone anymore. Yeah, anyone else?
Well, I wanted to crush the competition.
All right, crush the competition, right? All really good reasons. People may be passionate about something. A lot of times people will be like, wow, I'm so excited about this thing, like be it a farm or a computer program or something. They just have something and they feel like the world wants it. So with that in mind, how many people started their business to do accounting or manage HR or, maybe like figure out a value proposition or all these other things? And what we see time and time again, and this is true, everything I'm going to be talking about tonight is true whether you are a Main Street business or you're starting a food truck or something like that, or you are a high growth business. And what we see over and over again is that people who are really innovative, oftentimes, right, they start up a business because they want to go out and change the world. And they don't necessarily have formal training in that. And so, what I've seen over the years is that people fall into what we call this skills chasm, where you start the business, it's going along, it's happening, and then all of a sudden you realize like, oh, wow, I didn't know about whatever I didn't know about, and you fall in the skills chasm, and as a result, you go out of business. So for the last, for the last quite long while now, decades, I've been working with people to fill in that skills chasm. And this is, again, whether people are starting farms or small businesses or large business. But you see this over and over again with innovators. Like I live on MDI, right? And so there's a lot of biotech, things like that. You talk to scientists about business and they're like, what does that mean? And you realize there's a whole different lingo. And so one thing that I have been doing for quite some time is teaching these skills at Babson College, at College of the Atlantic. And I've also been working with my partner, Jordan Motzkin, who has worked with a company that was acquired by Cisco, has done some work with Apple. And we have been helping entrepreneurs, and hundreds of them, and working with all of these organizations down here, fill in that skills chasm. And we have done this in a number of ways. I'm going to talk to you first about our boot camps, which we used to do and still do, as well as Profit Decoder, but some of the history. So we worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs. Some of these, this is mostly Maine companies here, but in some of these names you may be familiar with, people like North Score or Down East Dayboat or Swallowfield or Crooked Face Creamery. Some of them have come through here at Dirigo Labs, I believe. And what we started with was this, we had investors who were coming to us and who were interested in the food system. And they said, wow, you know what? There are all these amazing entrepreneurs out there. We want to invest in them and they're not investable. And so they came to us and said, how do you upskill people really rapidly to get them the skills they need? And as I said, I work at College of the Atlantic and I'm the chair of the Sustainable Business Program there. So the advantage and the thing that's happened for me is I don't work with traditional business students, right? I work with someone who's a scientist and they want to start a biofuel company, or an educator who wants to change education and start schools. I work with students who are all across the economy, from the creative economy to nonprofits to everything. And so we developed a program there called the Hatchery, where students start businesses for academic credit. And so when this group of investors came to me and said, hey, we've got all these people who are super passionate and want to do this thing, but they don't have the skills, we took the academic program, that Hatchery course where students start businesses for credit, and smushed it down into a 3-day seminar that is about 17 weeks of content in 3 days. And the idea here is that we're going to transform innovators into entrepreneurs. And we do this virtually. We did this virtually and in person. And so we did a couple of things. So this was described by one person who had an MBA, who went through the program. They're like, wow, this was like a 3-day MBA program. So we give them, we have about 17 custom modules that we do. One of which we'll talk about tonight, which is Profit Decoder. We bring in expert mentors from the industry, and they work with them throughout the 3 days. And then finally, there's the pitch competition, which brings it all together, because we don't see pitching as this thing that you do as a side, because the way you tell your story impacts your understanding of the business. And so we have all of these data points from learning about your financials, value proposition, and then bring it together in a pitch contest. So we did a study because we wanted to see, like, hey, are we doing a good job or not? And so we did a study, a 6-year longitudinal study. And what we found is people who went through our boot camps, about 85% of them were operating after 4 years, which was about 85% or about 60% over the national rate. They were growing faster than the national average. So their annual growth rate was 49%, not too terrible, which was about 6 times higher than the national average. And we found that ventures raising money were raising on average about $250,000. So we saw that the program was working. This was super intense and mostly in person. And then everyone knows what happened, right? Exactly. COVID hit, and we had been doing these in person. Now we do them virtually as well. But we were like, wow, everything screeched to a halt, like it did for everybody, as we tried to figure out what to do. And so we went back, and we really had this kind of mantra that entrepreneurs want to run their businesses, right? Not decipher accounting. And this was perhaps the biggest pain point we saw from those boot camps that we had done. And when you explained it in a way that wasn't full of accounting jargon, and you showed people how the numbers work, suddenly they were like, the light bulbs went off, they reformulated their businesses. We had one person in a boot camp, she sat down with us, and in 3 hours, she figured out, like, wow, if I just stop selling this product here and move more over here, I'll make $20,000 more, because I don't have enough product to service my market, so I can go to this higher level. And so we said, like, hey, how can we solve this for a lot of people? And it turned out, after doing some investigation, for about 26 million people out there, entrepreneurial innovators, the financial experience isn't working. So on the first hand, you say, like, whoa, 81% of those folks handle their finances themselves. That's awesome, right? Well, except that 86 don't really review their financial statements. And I would bet most of the other 14% don't even know what they mean, right? So that even though they're looking at them, it's like you're looking at this stuff that you don't understand. And not surprisingly, this is the #1 reason for small business failure. So why don't they, if this is such a huge pain point, why don't they, why don't they engage with this stuff? And so to help, I want to just kind of paint a metaphor of this. And I want to use, like, the friendliest food in the world, right? Pizza, right? pizza is the #1 food in the US, right? Why do people like it? Right? It's delicious, it has lots of cheese, it's fabulous. However, if you take that same pizza and you stick it in a blender and make it into a smoothie, it's disgusting, right? And so the moral of the story here is that experience and presentation matter. And this is what it looks like for most people when they're trying to get financial insights. You have financial reports, right? They make you go blind immediately as soon as you look at them, unless you're an accountant. And then you have these dashboards, which have a lot of beautiful looking graphics, but really not much better to help you understand. And for entrepreneurs, what these look like is this. It's like, hey, go fly this. We're not going to give you any training on it. You may not know about it, but get in that cockpit and fly that plane. And so they have a couple things going on here when people look at their financials. First of all, and perhaps most importantly, it's terrifying, right? You're afraid of the numbers. You're intimidated by what the stuff says. There's a lot of jargon, accounting terminology. You're like, wow, I don't have time to learn all of these dials and what they do, so I'm just going to ignore it. And then you feel like you're totally alone. And so Profit Decoder has been working to solve all three of these problems. And so, like any good startup, right? We started and we prototyped. So I want to take you back and show you what we were doing and then what it's become, and then we'll dive in. I'll pause. Questions? I'm doing all right? Following me? All right. So from 2003 till 2021, right? We had Excel spreadsheets that were, I would say they would only hurt a little bit, right? And we made these simpler over the years where, we had directions and you could just enter the shaded cells and it would give you outputs, and they were functional, but you needed a ton of hand-holding. They were good enough in the boot camps in the early days, especially because we were sitting there side by side with people. But then once COVID hit, you'll notice, like right where this stops is 2021, we said, we got to do this different, and we got to be, part of the solution instead of creating the same old problem for people. And so we created this, what we call the easygoing cost worksheet in Google. And so you can see here, like much different kind of layout, super simple directions here. You could, the instructions, where you could enter your sales. And I'll show you like what an output from that would look like. Like, here's your break-even analysis. And it would say like, hey, these are all the key data points. And then we would give you analysis and show you here. We had friendly emojis, like this person wasn't doing really well, so they got a sad face. And you could go in and manipulate it. And what was cool about this is Profit Decoder does all the same stuff as the Google Sheet. It just does it better and more simple. And so this was in 2022, we launched this. And of course, like most optimistic entrepreneurs, we said like, hey, in 4 weeks, we're going to build this web app and Profit Decoder is going to work. And so then a year later, we launched. And this is what Profit Decoder looks like now. You can access it, on your laptop, on your phone, on your tablet. It's got a really easy layout, and I'll talk about all of that in a minute. You can do different scenarios for different kinds of businesses, but much easier, simpler interface. And I should mention, like that easygoing cost worksheet and those spreadsheets, we had tested them. I mean, those hundreds of entrepreneurs helped us refine our product, right? Every time someone was looking at it, going like, wait, I don't get it. Like that was a moment for us to keep refining and improving it and all of that. And when COVID happened, it was really when we had the impetus to get serious about it and go to the easygoing cost worksheet and then ultimately the Profit Decoder. And so, as I mentioned, we launched officially in January of 2023. There are two things that we do. We have master classes, which give you like essential skills and actionable frameworks. And then we have the software, and the software you can take with you. I just want to show you, so you can do this, self-led through the software. We also have training programs that we take people through, and there are really 4 steps that either whether you're going through a training program or you're doing self-led that you go through here. So the first is that you understand your numbers, right? And so what we do is, if you're in a master class, what we do is we teach you about the numbers, give you really simple interface to understand it. We use a lot of metaphors of cookies. think because I used to be in the food industry, so I relate like pizza, cookies, I'm all about that. Also, most people aren't afraid of a chocolate chip cookie, right? And so it's a really easy way to get your head around concepts. And then, we talk about low floor, like anyone can do it, but a high ceiling, like you can make this stuff increasingly complex once you've got the basics down and understand it. So then what we do is we have you understand the numbers, then you go apply, stick your numbers in Profit Decoder. Then we do an analysis of your business, helping you see things like, hey, why do you want to be thinking about variable costs? Like, what does a change do? And then you go into Profit Decoder, and again, you can apply that and see those changes directly in your business, and I'll show you all this. And then, at the end here, you leave with a plan. And so there's a financial plan to get to profitability. If you're in a master class with us, you actually we use a system that was first developed by NASA to help people prioritize. And it was based on the accident in Apollo 13. So people can say like, hey, here's where I want to go financially. These are the most important things I need to do to get there, and go forward. And then finally, we really, after you have your plan, we really dig in some more with the app, and talk about how you can do different scenarios for growth. Because you can do a lot more with Profit Decoder than just understand your profitability, look at price changes, cost changes, all of those things. And again, just a couple things that Profit Decoder doesn't have, like no spreadsheets, no math, no accounting. The language is kept really plain so people can get in there, and get an idea of their business. So in both of these things, we follow this kind of 4-step process. So if it's all right, questions, I'll pause there if there are any questions. We good? No, everyone looks like they're still awake. Anyone need another beer, more food, anything like that? All right, I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna give you a demo. Is that all right? All right. Oh yeah. Thank you. All right. So when you get into Profit Decoder here, we do everything by scenarios, and a scenario could be different kinds of business, like precision manufacturing or a widget startup. I did a year ago restaurant. You can also, we have a demo up here that you can download, and you can add new scenarios. You just click here, and then you can select your business type, right? And so we've got about 50 different businesses in there and are constantly adding more. And so here, I'll show you, I loaded up this restaurant here. So, this could be a restaurant, a food truck, manufacturing, software, could be a property management company, any of those kinds of things. It would be the same basic process. So you go in here, we ask you to enter your sales amount. Is it monthly or annually? You'll notice everything here is done with text bubbles to lead you through and provide analysis. And if you don't know your numbers, just do what you do on a spreadsheet, put in your best guess, and then we'll refine them. And then what we do, depending on your industry, we have you, it brings up some costs here. So this is a restaurant, so you'll see things like disposable packaging, gas and mileage, signage, etc. I'm going to click credit card fees just so we can add one, but really, and I've already put a bunch in here so you can see what it looks like. So here, you have your costs, and you'll see it's really simple. Here, you don't put in things like cost of goods sold or SG&A. It's like, hey, we buy alcohol, cleaning, warewash supplies, employee benefits, food purchases, etc. And you can load up all those. Oh, here's our credit card fees down here. And if we want to edit this, right, we can just go in, and then you can put in the amount that you spend on it. Is it monthly or annually? We can cancel out of here if we are like, oh, we don't want credit card fees. We can delete it, right, etc. So super easy interface to add stuff. And then what you can do here is you put in your fixed costs. And again, I've done a bunch of these, so I'm not going to bother to do that. And it shows you both the number of costs, and it gives you a subtotal. And you'll see here, it's like equipment lease, hood cleaning, right? All the things that a restaurant would want to have in it. And then you can also do business and equipment. And so we could add in something here. Let's say like, hey, we're thinking about getting a new mixer, right? We could just add it in here. And is it an operating cost for buildings and equipment? And we could put in the price paid. Let's just say it's $15,000 for a small Hobart, right? And it's a 7-year life. And we can also do payments. And then you can put in your loan payment and all that stuff. So we can say, hey, are we getting a $14,000 loan, or 140 would be great. And, you know, it's called a 7% interest rate. And maybe it's a 6-year loan and we haven't paid any of it. And boom, it'll tell you your annual interest payment is $918. It'll also depreciate it for you just based on the useful life. You don't need to know anything about that. Let me try and get out of here. I think that may be. Oh, there we go. All right. So I'm going to close this up, and then we can also delete that mixer if we didn't want it. Okay, so then what we can do here is, you know, as we go into the next section here, we get a profitability analysis, and it explains how we're doing, right? So now I understand the business, like, hey, here's your sales. Your sales are 985,000 a year. It looks like, hey, it looks like you're below 300,000 below break even. Don't worry, we can look at how to fix that. Gives you your break even over here of 1.3 million. And it lays it out here in chart form if you're into that. And then it gives you your cost analysis. So, hey, you're spending about 780,000 on variable costs. So what? Like, why does that matter? And then it tells you down here, well, look, you're spending 79% or 79 cents out of every dollar you bring in on variable costs. Like, for those of you who are, you know, further along in business, that like should strike the fear of God into your heart. Like, so every time you sell a dollar, you're only keeping 21 cents because 79 cents are going to your variable costs. And then it tells you here your fixed costs. It gives you your top cost categories, so you know what they are. And then what it says down here is, hey, your contribution for each sales dollar is 21%. And then it says, if you don't know what contribution is, so, well, each dollar sold contributes 21 cents to pay for fixed costs. Once you pay for those, once your fixed costs are all paid off, each dollar sold will produce 21 cents in profits. So once we pay off that big mountain of fixed costs, then we'll start producing profits. And here it gives you your profit, or in this case, your loss. Questions on that before I go on to the next section? Does that seem clear? And the question could be like, hey, I don't get it. That's totally legit. Because like, we really do value user feedback, and anytime someone is stumped, it's an opportunity for us to do something better. So, questions?
It's from like the US perspective. Say I don't like something I'm seeing right now, like how do I troubleshoot that? How do I adapt and kind of cyclically manage this right now?
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a sec, but if I don't, ask me. So what we want to do now is we want you to understand what the business is, and then we're going to start pulling on the levers of changing costs and changing price and things like that. That's a great question, because that's what this is all about. Really, is how do you think about changes, right? So, other questions?
Do you pull data out of credit card statements or bank statements?
So this is only version 263, and version it is on our list to do that. So eventually you will, but you can't do that right now. Really good question though. We know that's something our users want to do. So we're going to get there. Other questions? All right. So here we ask you to enter in the unit name of what you sell. So is it transaction, orders, meals, pounds, whatever it may be, and what's your unit price? And what we do with that is we allow you to put in seasonality. So it's Maine, right? So, and I live in Bar Harbor, so everyone's open 6 months of the year, and they're usually working actually more than 5 days a week during the season. And we give you a breakdown of your dollar sales up here by year, month, and day. But what's cooler than that for most entrepreneurs is we give you a breakdown of your units. And if someone says to you like, hey, you need to sell 60,000 meals to break even, most people have no idea how to conceptualize that. But if you say like down here in daily meals, like, hey, you need to be selling 457 meals a day, suddenly you're like, oh, wait a minute, I get what 457 looks like. And right now you're selling about 347. So what does that 100 meal gap look like? Like, how would you need more servers, more space, different operating hours, right? And let you think about that. Now, I'm going to skip ahead here So we're here in seasonality. You can change your costs and it will show you the impact of changing costs. We're going to do the same thing on the price because it's basically the same process. So let me just jump over there to change price. So just to explain this, here in the middle is your original scenario. So your average unit price is $22, 60,000 meals to break even. Your variable costs are 79%, right? Break even is 1.2 million. And you say like, whoa, man, my costs are going up. Like, what would happen if I change my prices a little bit? So all you have to do is click the button and say like, hey, what if I change my price by 6%? Or let's go crazy, let's go 8%, right? Because there's been a lot of inflation. And so what this shows you is like, wow, if you went for 8%, your new average meal price would be about $23.76. Your break-even units though would be 44,000 meals, right? Which is a unit change of 25%. In other words, you could, with an 8% sales increase, you could break even by selling 25% less stuff. Like, think about that operationally. Like, what does that mean? Like, you could do a whole lot less. Conversely, if you're like, wow, I'm going to do a sale and I'm going to discount my way out of this. It says, well, cool. If you want to do that, then you're at $20.24. Well, but then you need to sell about 90,000 meals, or you'd have to sell 52% more based on an 8% difference in your sales price, right? This is the stuff entrepreneurs aren't doing. And again, whether you're a mom and pop or a growth business, it doesn't really matter. Like, people aren't thinking about this. So you can do this with price here or sales. And so when you tell people to increase price, what's the first thing they say to you? If I say to you, hey, raise your prices 8%, what do you think? Oh my God, what happens if I increase my price and that reduces my sales? What we tell you, like, hey, do you know that your profitability is actually going to go up, or your profitability increases unless the number of meals sold falls more than 25%? So now instead of like close my eyes and guess and hope everything goes well, I say like, wow, do I really think I'm going to lose a quarter of my customers if my price goes up by $1.76? Conversely, when you look at decreasing price, how does that impact profits? Well, your profitability is going to go down unless the number of meals sold increases more than 52%. So you better be sure that that's a marketing expense. That's not a sales strategy, right? So it helps you make the decision and gives you those data points. So at least, it doesn't tell you whether or not you're going to lose 25% of your customers, but you have a sense of like, wow, do I really think I'm going to lose that many? So questions on any of that? Yeah.
Can you model out different products at once?
So one of the things we're working on now is how you can do multiple products. The way that you do it is through the scenarios.
Okay.
So like what you would have if you had like, and I'll show you, it's super easy. You can put in all your data to get a look at the business as a whole, and then you can do different product lines and see which ones are really contributing. Right along with the build, when we're going to import bank statements, we've modeled this out in Google Sheets, but it's going to take a little bit to get it in there because our whole thing is we want it to be simple, right? So and I'll just show you since you asked actually. So we can go back here to scenarios, right? And I'll say, hey, we want to look at this. We can duplicate it. All of our data is now here, right? And then we can edit this. And this could be like Dirigo Restaurant, the food truck edition, right? And then we could go in and change costs all our costs are in, and we could edit out what we don't want.
And then you just basically, does the user have to go in and change the shared costs? Like if there's.
Yeah, so you would want, yes, you would want to do that. You'd want to look at your fixed costs and say, hey, are we spending a ton of fixed costs on this or that, and get it more accurate. Again, just like in a spreadsheet, it's a process of pulling it in. Yeah.
I love this. I've always been a believer. But it seems to me that it is dependent upon the data to begin with. How do you ensure that the data is?
All analysis depends on good data. I think what we have seen is the second thing it depends on is a user's willingness to go back and edit and believe that the data makes a difference. And so one of the things we've seen with this is when people will put in their data the first time and they're like, oh, wait, that doesn't look right. But in Excel, what happens is they're terrified. They don't know what links to what, they don't know where to go. And in this, you just go and say like, hey, like I'm gonna go back in here. I think my variable cost seems super high. Like I'm gonna go back to my variable cost section and just edit it. And so what we see is people then, or you could do another, you could make another scenario and manipulate that. So what it allows people to do is get in and deal with bad data, because everybody's got bad data. Like we've had people who use QuickBooks and bookkeepers, and they get in here and they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't, they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And then they can go in and deal with it. So I think more like bad data is one thing. The other piece is the ability to go in and manipulate. Yeah.
Vivian, you have QuickBooks integration?
We will. We do not have it yet. And what we find is a lot of people with QuickBooks don't get what the different categories are, but it's not hard to enter this. I actually was doing this with an accounting firm, and one of the accountants said, "Oh, I hand entered all of our line items into here, you know, breaking it down by variable and fixed costs." So it doesn't take that long. It's good, really good question, but that's something we're going for. Other questions? Susan, did I answer?
You did, yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. So the last piece here I want to show you is where we bring it all together. And this is, so what we found is you want to let people change their costs individually, right? Then you can see like how the cost changes impact. You want to see price individually, but then what you want to really do is bring it all together. But if you start here as a first-time user, your head explodes. It's like too many things to look at. So here now you could say, hey, what's your goal? What's your profit goal? Right? And we just picked $10,000 here. Let's say we want to have $10,000. And it will tell you like, hey, to do that, you need 61,000 meals. You're here at 44,000, 45,000. And so what we want to do here is manipulate things and see how that goes. And so it starts off by telling you, okay, look, if you want to do 61,000 meals, you're going to need to grow your sales by 36%. Which is like oh my God, how am I going to do that? But suddenly, well, let's look at a price change. And you know, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm scared, like people aren't going to come if I raise my prices too much. So I don't want to do 8%. Let's do 6%. And then here's our unit variable cost, you know, $17.38. What if I could just shave a wee bit off of that, like 1 or 2%? And suddenly here, you're like, oh, wait a minute, with my current sales volume, I could be making $10,000, right? So I've taken this from a loss, which is where we started it, to making $10,000. And then the next thing that entrepreneurs do when they see this, you know what they say? Like, okay, how do I do that? And then you start getting into the fun stuff of like, oh, wow, what if I had portion control? I'm going to negotiate with my suppliers because I suddenly understand 2% really matters, right? And I'm going to raise my prices a little bit or try and bundle things or you know, all the things that entrepreneurs do, but you can see like, hey, this is what this could look like in terms of having different results. So I want to pause again for questions and then I'm going to jump back into the presentation. Is that, yeah.
I think, not directly applicable to this, but modeling out things like cost per click and churn rates, is that something that you all?
I mean, you could do it, you'd have to make it like, we'd have to work on that, right? And so like, and we've seen people do all kinds of different stuff. Like one of my favorite, I'll talk about that in a minute, but does that make sense? So yeah, you could start looking at cost per click and just modeling it out. Also, if you were like, I want to start a business and I want to just look at one product, right? You could put in like a single widget or a single clicker or whatever it is, put in your fixed costs and it will tell you what you need to do to break even, right? So you could also, just as a way of trying to get your head around like, wow, does it make sense to build these things or do this thing? Like, what if I just look at one unit, like one cookie and like, how many cookies would I need to sell? And it will tell you all that. And you can adjust the price and all that stuff. So before even starting, you can get a head start. Yeah.
You ever notice that people that are really good at spreadsheets get lost in that?
All.
This, like, that's a value conversation that I'm saying, like, I can see back No offense, I'm calling you just get up here. I could get like, I could do the max underwrite the scale, you'd be like 6 days later, got a perfect solution. Or you know, and
And I mean, we do a lot of spreadsheeting. And it is super easy to be like, oh, we got it figured out. And then you go away and 2 days later you come back and be like, I have no idea where that connected to. I don't know why it's doing that. And so unless you're keeping really good notes, so it prevents all of that, which goes back to the bad data piece. Yeah.
So you're coming up with multiple analysis, which is great on the screen. Can you print any of these?
Yeah, so again, yeah, right now what people are doing is they're doing a PDF of the different screens, and you can put it as one PDF and look. What we're gonna eventually do is have a CSV export or a download. Again, we just launched in January, so we're gonna get there, but it just takes time and engineering, which takes money, and customers, which takes time and engineering. Yeah.
So if you have, your brand new business.
Yeah.
Say you don't have a history.
Yeah.
You were going to calculate something like your cost of fuel.
Yeah.
Do you have some resources, embedded or available for looking at that sort of
No.
price cycle?
Yeah, so not yet. One of the things there's a ton of uses of AI in this, consolidating data from people. Like we've had people say like, hey, I'm doing this business. How do I compare to everybody else who's doing this business at my size? And so you can have those things pop up as like, hey, red flag, your variable costs are super high, your costs of food or whatever in this case are high or low. And we'll do all those things. Also, when we're gonna compare like multiple products, we're gonna look at, there's a lot of different ways you can compare things. So to understand which ones are really the best products. So eventually that will have more resources. Right now, what we're really focusing on is ease of interface and helping people enter their data in a way they understand it. Yeah.
can I send, like, let's say that I want to bring up my cost center, so can I send everything with my backlog within the software?
So you could, the easiest way to do this would be just to click the button down here.
If you have like an admin or computer board that you draw something to me.
No, that again is something we've talked about, like, and bringing in multiple people. Right now, it's like your account, one user per account, so you'd be sharing your password with these guys back here, I think. Yeah. Great, these are all great questions. And you can see you all are going where we're in our minds, which is like, oh wow, what does the next versions of this look like? Yeah.
Any thoughts on, the VC space, right? It's less about profitability, it's more about burn down.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts about modeling burn down as well?
We haven't, that would be a way later addition. Like if you're looking at like your cash burn rate and things like that. Essentially what this produces, for those of you who are accounting people, like this is going to produce a P&L, which I want to talk about. If I can jump back into the presentation, is that all right? I'm happy to answer more questions. But this is kind of one of the things that we think is our secret sauce here, which is before doing full financial projections and getting into all three financial statements and all the spreadsheets and everything like that, like understand what it is you're building. And so we see ourselves as like a conceptual drawing, right? If you're saying like, hey, I want to move a window around in this drawing, or I want to do something slightly different, you can model that out and say like, oh, that makes sense. This works. This doesn't. And then once you understand that you have a functional model that works, whether this is, I think of like in your case with a venture-backed company, like what's it going to look like 3 generations down the road? You could model that out and say like, here's where we're going. And, here's V1, V2, V3, because you can do multiple scenarios. And then once you have that, then you can do the full architectural plan of a spreadsheet and getting into full financial projections. But doing this or doing the full financial projections early on is a bit of a fool's errand because it takes a ton of time and energy. And why would you want to model something that's fundamentally unsound to begin with? And instead, you can just do a conceptual drawing and say like, hey, this seems to work. And I get my prices need to be higher or lower, and I'm going to model this out. And then with Profit Decoder, what we were looking at is a whole business evaluation, right? But you can do a lot more than that. You can do all of these things with it. You can decode like different lines of business, as we talked about, different scenarios. You can assess a new piece of equipment, or adding or evaluating a new hire. You just put it in there. You see how does it change things, right? You take your original scenario, copy it, and do that. You could look at a startup, like we talked about, like, hey, what's it cost to make one cookie or a batch of cookies or whatever it may be? And that could be widgets or semiconductors or whatever it is. And you can also look at, a product or service break even. And the thing that is probably the coolest for us to see is, like, this is Toad Braun, she works with a company called Downey Stavo. She's like amazing. She does these fantastic, amazing day boat scallops sold in Maine. She has been through so many different programs and accelerators and different things. And she just talks about, like, she has tried so many times to understand her finances and it just never, ever worked. And when she was working with us and with Profit Decoder, suddenly she's like, oh, wow, I can actually do this and get control of what I'm doing. And now she's like looking at all these different lines of businesses, figuring out like, oh, I was selling this wasn't profitable. I didn't know that before. And like got her finances in order simply because, and this goes back to your question, Susan, simply because she felt like she could do it. And that's the part about getting the data, and then you keep digging in, and then new questions come up and it gets better and better. And so that is really the example of, of someone we're doing this. And we've worked with people through tons of different industries. So I'd be happy to take any questions, any other questions. I know we're sort of pushing up against time here. You can find us, I should say, on profitdecoder.com. Feel free to reach out to me, jay@profitdecoder.com. Check out the website if you're interested in doing, either getting Profit Decoder itself. I should also mention we have several different packages for the baseline. So there's a free one that takes you just up to the profitability analysis. That first section that we paused on says like, hey, here's how you're doing. If you want to get in and manipulate the numbers, the paid plans, there's one for $149, right? Which lets you do 3 scenarios. And then there's one for $199, which lets you do up to 10. One click of that button to see what a price change is worth will easily pay it off. So there's a really good payback. And people keep telling us it's too inexpensive right now. So we've already, so get it now while it's still inexpensive. Happy to take any other questions. If not, thank you all very much. Check us out, profitdecoder.com.
Well, thank you, Jay. That was fantastic, and glad that you got to come to Waterville. It was a bit of a drive, but
yeah, thanks for having me
here.
Yeah.
Thank you to our audience for joining us this evening. We do these monthly, or usually on the second Thursday of the month. If not, we'll keep you posted. This conversation has been recorded and will be provided for later viewing on our YouTube channel. And I'd like to give a nice shout out to our sponsors, the Harold Alpine Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College, Valley Beverage, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. I hope you all have a wonderful and beautiful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.